Well, I love to acknowledge those that are on time with respect to your time. Engineers, I know you got a lot to do today. It's Friday. Seems like everything that can happen always happens on Friday mornings and Friday afternoons. So we'll get to it. We do want to thank the California Society for Healthcare Engineer for allowing us this platform to be able to review the safety and support services section of the MECH examination. And before you even take the test, I'd like to just congratulate everyone that's on the call for making that step and taking that step towards getting your MECH certification. I'm certain you're all going to do very, very well. Just as long as you've studied, as long as you give it your best shot. And if not, you take it again, but get that MECH certification. It's going to be so, so worth it for your career. And just as a small introduction, my name is Santiago Chambers, and I'm your Vice President for the Executive State Chair. And so I've been serving in CSHE since 2004. I've been at Los Angeles Chapter President, Orange County Chapter Vice President, Treasurer, Secretary, you name it. I've been in CSHE for a long, long time. And it's been just a privilege and an honor to be able to serve in those capacities and roles with the California Society of Healthcare Engineering. I'd like to thank Beth Demeter, Joyce Jones, all of the state, our president, and just all of our CSHE officers that could be on the line, that are with us on the line. I know we got Phil and we got Anthony on the line here as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge our officers that are here participating and just showing support for you as you take this step on your MECH journey. I've been in healthcare a little over 25 years, and I serve as the safety officer for Fountain Valley Regional Hospital, and that's out in Fountain Valley, California. Just as a sign of life and a sound check, if we all can wave. I know Mr. McLean got a pretty good group there. If we could just wave just to make sure we got good audio. Good morning, good morning. And I see John Davo there over there too, and everyone who's kind of showing your face. Angel, so good to see you all. Of course, Anthony, if you're shy and don't want to show your face this morning, we do acknowledge you as well. But thank you, gentlemen. I'm so glad we're communicating and coming in loud and clear. Good morning, Mitch. And so we'll go over this review. I'm not going to say I'm here to comprehensively teach you everything about safety and support, but I'm going to provide a few nuggets that'll hopefully come in handy when you're taking your exam. Safety and support is going to be the last portion of the MECH exam. I do hope you've had a chance to attend some of the other study groups. They're going to come in handy because you'd be surprised what questions can pop up. A lot of this is really general knowledge. A lot of it is applicable based on your job and what you've been doing for years. If you're brand new in this industry, you're going to be able to benefit from some of these tips. And so let's get going. I've talked about myself enough. As a plug there again, the 49th Annual Institute, the June 1st through the 3rd, at the Resort in Squaw Creek. Can't wait to shake your hands. I'll likely be in a suit next time you see me. I'm on my casual Friday polo flow here, so don't mind me here. But I do look forward to meeting you all as well. Change my slide here. All right, so on our agenda, just a really brief agenda. We're going to prepare for the test. We'll talk about taking the test, review of safety and support. We'll have a few practice questions, and then we'll open the floor for some general questions. Just a little bit again about the MECH certification. If you have 2 years of experience working in healthcare maintenance, that's you all, you can take the test and become MECH certified. That's our goal. And if you have 4 or more years of experience, that's going to be some of you, you can achieve the required score on the test. You can be a senior MECH certified technician. And the test is going to cover the 7 categories of healthcare maintenance work. That's going to cover plumbing, carpentry, electrical, general maintenance, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, our systems, power plant boiler, and safety and support services, which is the session that you all signed up for today. And then once you're a successful test candidate, you'll be able to not brag, but you'll be able to really proudly boast of your knowledge and your broad range of skills in all of these categories. So we look forward to you passing that examination. All right, preparing for the test. This is going to be starting now. You've already started preparing for the test. Throughout your career, you've been preparing for the test, but I just wanted to spend a minute or two talking about the night before. Get plenty of rest the night before. When you're out there enjoying yourself, you've been on the road, you get in town, you get to the hotel, it's going to be tempting to stay up late at night and have a few. You see my guy here in his hard hat here having one just for the road. Please be sure to stay hydrated with water. Get plenty of rest the night before. Don't eat a really heavy breakfast unless you're just solid with eating a big old breakfast. But if you're anything like old safety officer Santiago, I just hit that 50 years old in February. I eat a breakfast sandwich, I eat a meal, and boy, I'm telling you, I'm lethargic and I have to go walk around the plant and walk around the facility just to kind of burn it off and to get back active. Study the test taking materials that you've gotten, and then remember all of the notes that you have. I would bring them with me, and then when they say put them away, you put them away, but have all of that stuff leading all the way up until you take the test. Don't add or subtract from the material unless you're confident it will help, because again, your experience, your general knowledge is good, but there are some things that you may have learned and learned wrong. There are some things, shortcuts you may have taken that gotten you through your career, but if it's not state regulated, if it's not federally regulated, if it's not best practice, it could become a hindrance to you when you're taking your test. So again, we want to be by the book. We want to take the test the way the test is written. Use recommended study materials and a lot of different links to the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, local, city, state, and federal code standards, guidelines have been provided to you already. And that's going to really come in handy for you for these particular sessions. Just on the yellow note sticker there, it says pace yourself, all right? You know if you got an hour, you know if you got 2 hours, you know if your time's starting to run out, the beads of sweat is starting to pool up on your head. Just take your time, you know, but also be mindful of the amount of time you're spending on each question. Listen to and read the directions for each test carefully. Your proctor, whether it's Joyce, whether it's Beth, they will be very clear on what the instructions are for taking the test and how they'll administer the test. And they'll give you all of that information just before they hand you your test. And they'll proctor it and ensure it's being done fairly and with no cheating. Tisk. All right. And then we want to read each question carefully. One thing we're going to know about this test is that there's not going to be trick questions. They're not trying to trip you up. All right. It's either right or it's wrong. You want to key in and hone in on that right answer. Read the questions before reading the rest of the passage. Answer each and every question. Don't leave anything blank. If it says a zebra is red and green and you don't know the color of a zebra, I'd rather guess than just leave a blank. If you happen to circle the one that says black and white, you might get a good chance of getting that answer. So don't leave any blanks. I think we're clear on that. And eliminate obviously wrong answer questions. There's always at least one answer like the red and green zebra that you'll see typically that you can rule out. So I always say rule out the ridiculous, hone in on the obvious. The obvious would be at least 1 or 2 out of the 4 if it's multiple choice. If it's 5 or 6, or if you see all of the above, pay attention to those. And then there's a good chance that it's likely all of the above as well. But again, be careful. If it's A and C or that kind of sequencing, pay close attention, read it, reread it, and review your work. And then the last thing I would like to encourage you to do, trust your experience and gut. You got this. You've been doing this for a long time. Dan, no, even if you're brand new as an engineer, which I seriously doubt, but even if you were brand new, you got hired, you were employed, you've been on the job, you're skilled, you're knowledgeable, you've been doing this, you've been getting exposed to it. I remember my first couple years in healthcare, I learned so much walking with the senior engineer, with the facilities director, with the hospital safety officer. And it was amazing how much of that information was just being poured into me back when I was a coordinator, just an environmental care coordinator. I was learning so much about general safety, general maintenance, and all of the different guidelines to help keep me not only in compliance, but keep me from getting hurt, keep me from getting killed, keep me from hurting other people. So trust your gut, trust your experience. Remember, you got this. On the next slide, taking the test, look through the entire test again before starting. Read the question and statement thoroughly. I'm repeating these and some of these things for a reason. I want to make sure we're clear on this. Eliminate each answer that's not possible, one at a time. Look for clues in the remaining answers. Sometimes you can find the answer at the end of the question or from a previous question or previous answer. Don't leave anything blank. Look for the easy sections or questions and start there. When you get to safety and support services, there's going to be a lot of general knowledge safety questions that should be just like 1, 2, 3, boom, 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 knock those out. When you get to ladder safety, when you get to engineering best practice, when you get to PPE, we've been dealing with PPE for infection prevention and control for over 2 years, and even more so, you know, if you've been in healthcare for any amount of time, because they're so big on personal protective equipment, and you should be able to knock those questions out. Check the answer sheet often to ensure that the answers are placed correctly. Sometimes you might just bubble in or mark in the wrong section just because you were rubbing your eyes or you lost track of where you were. So go back and check again. And then again, I'm going to repeat, keep in mind that there are no trick questions. MECH doesn't want to do that to you and put you through that. They want you to be successful at it. They're not going to make it a cakewalk or walk in the park, but they're not trying to trick you at least. All right, let's dig in, gentlemen. Let's dig in, lady. If we got any ladies on the call too, let's dig in, engineers. Review of safety and support. So when we're talking about gas and arc welding safety, there's some general knowledge that we want to make sure we're applying, especially when you're using gauges and hoses. Sometimes our arc welding is plug-in and they're mechanical. Some are hooked up to tanks. Whatever mode of welding we're using, we want to ensure that we have tight connections. We want to have the right connections. We want to ensure that we're properly grounded. Can anyone unmute themselves and tell me what's the benefit of ensuring you have a proper ground when you're doing some welding? Anyone?
For safety measures?
That's a good answer. I'm digging that. It's a safety measure. The circuit, when the electrodes, you got your electrode, you're holding it, you're doing your welding, if you got it plugged in, it's got to complete a circuit. And if you don't have a proper ground, you touch something, it's going to find it, and it's going to find you, and it can stop your heart. It can cause you to get an electrical shock. So if you look at the picture there, you have your workpiece or your base metal. That's where you're welding. When you're properly grounded, you're going to get a really good weld too by being grounded. If you don't have a good ground, your job's not going to come out as good as it could be too. So pay attention to your welding table, your workpiece connection, which is going to be your ground, your clamp. Take a look at all of your leads. We want to ensure that our cables are all in good condition. They're not frayed, they're not peeling back, they're not submerged in water. You'd be surprised the conditions that people work in just because they want to get things done. And it's easy to forget about safety. I see people daisy chaining and hooking up extension cord to another extension cord, soaking through water, and then plugged into an outlet on the wall that has an adapter on it, and all of these different scenarios. And most of us as seasoned engineers, we can walk by and we could just see a potential catastrophe. You got the people that are young hotshot that just want to really try to get it done. Back when I was in the Navy, they called it gun decking. When you're gun decking, you're just trying to get it done. You're not paying attention to safety protocols, safety guidelines. You're not grounding. You're not checking your hoses for tightness. You're not wearing the appropriate PPE. PPE that you should have on when you're doing gas and arc welding. Your thick fire-rated gloves, you should have those insulated gloves. You should have your welding helmet with the appropriate vision ratings on it so that you're not using the wrong welding helmet for the job that you're doing. I always say, when in doubt, use the highest rating that you can get. If I got this big old super big UFO helmet on just to do a small job, I'd rather look silly with this big old PPE on than to not have enough PPE and risk going blind, risk getting a burn, risk getting serious injuries to myself. And so ensure that you're wearing your PPE, not just wearing tank tops and being in short sleeve shirts when you're doing hot work and when you're welding, but ensuring that you're covering your entire body, covering your eyes, wearing your shields and having those in place, and communicating with the people working around you. Hey, I got some work going on here. Get your signage up. Ensure that you create a safety area, a safe field, so that people aren't walking into your work zone. All right. In general, for safe operation of hand and power tools, you want to step one, please look at the picture there for the 5 steps to tool safety. Step one, check your tools regularly for wear and damage. A seasoned engineer got this old tool bag and everything's thrown in there together, and you've had these snips and these crimps and all these old tools for 2-3 decades. These are my old reliables, but it doesn't hurt to take a look at your tools, especially your power tools. Power tools can go bad. They could get frayed, they could get worn. Sometimes they get soaked or submerged in water. If you ever have a situation with a power tool that's been submerged in water, you left them out in the rain, it's just best to get rid of that stuff. Don't hang on to it because, oh, it cost me a lot of money. I love the engineers that have that push cart that's all organized. They got everything sorted. You can reach in there and you're not going to cut your fingers. You're not going to grab something that's going to hurt you and hurt other people. So again, check your tools regularly for wear and damage. Number 2, use the correct tool for the job. Some people believe a screwdriver is just a tool for everything. They use a flathead, they go into the main electrical panels, they go into the central plant, and they just got their flathead screwdriver and they're using it for everything. Ensure that you got the appropriate tool for the job. And that happens when you conduct a risk assessment or a site evaluation. You get your appropriate tools, you have your appropriate PPE, and then if you use the correct tool, you're going to do the correct job all of the time. Step 3, keep your tools clean and in good condition. Wipe them down, clean them up, dust them off, put them back in the sheath or back in the container if you have one that you can put them back in. It's always great when you see those drill bits that have the holsters or the small containers that you can organize and sort everything in. That's going to not only save you time, but it's going to help keep you safe. All right. Use appropriate safety equipment. We can't stress that enough. If you can protect those ears, if you could put in hearing protection, do your noise assessment. Just taking the time to measure the decibels for the work that you're doing with dosimetry. I'm sure when you're scrolling social media, you see all of those different advertisements that are showing, oh, you can sue and you can get compensation for hearing loss. You don't even want to be trying to sue. If you can protect your ears, even if you're 50, it's not too late, or 60, it's not too late to protect what little hearing you may have left. So if you could put on those earphones, the noise canceling, if you could put on the earbuds, ensure that they fit properly, get those and put those in. Your goggles, your eye protections. I even use these for going out on the nursing units when I'm going on the COVID unit, as well as they have the hard face shields, they have the helmets, they have the gloves, but wear your PPE and keep it clean and in good repair. If your PPE is soiled or damaged, just go ahead and get rid of it or replace it. And then step 5, keep your hands clear of moving parts. It's so tempting to just reach your hand in to grab something if something falls. If you haven't de-energized the equipment, if you haven't turned it off, if you haven't taken the steps to let something power down, you could get in a whole lot of trouble by putting your hand near moving parts. And that includes the equipment that you're using. All right, and so if you've ever been in a carpenter shop and you see people feeding the wood into the saw, or you see people trying to correct an angle or trying to correct a measurement when they're doing some sawing or cutting, it's easy to get in trouble by sticking those fingertips in there. Even if you got gloves on, you can lose a digit, lose a finger by not keeping your hands clear of the moving parts, all right? And it is not only just a compliance thing, or it's not just about the taglines of be safe, do the right thing, but it's about personal protection and keeping others safe as well. It is a very heavily regulated industry when we talk about the maintenance field and when we talk about working with power tools. Cal OSHA and federal OSHA, the Occupational Safety Health Administration, pays particular attention to how we do our work and keeping people safe. Hundreds and thousands of workers go injured all the time because of a lot of these different safety measures that were ignored or probably overlooked. And so they have a requirement from a regulatory perspective to keep an eye on us to ensure we're doing the right thing. And so if you ever just Googled OSHA, And I would encourage you to go to the OSHA site. If you haven't taken a look at it for taking this test, you're going to find almost every section of the MECH exam has some reference to Cal OSHA or federal OSHA. So please make sure you go to there. If you just go into the keyword and just put maintenance, once you get to the OSHA site, whether it's California or whether it's our federal, and look at those different CFRs. We got General Industry 29 Code of Federal Regulations 1910. Each one of those hyperlinks, when you go to Cal OSHA, that was snipped. That's a screenshot there. Let me wiggle my arrow around this. Right here was just the most basic Google search of just OSHA maintenance. That's all you got to put. And there's a whole page with different hyperlinks. So they talk about portable power tools, handheld equipment, hand and portable power tools and equipment in general, guarding of portable power tools, other portable tools and equipment. So each one of those blue links there has related information that'll take you to another page. If you just Google nothing more than 29 CFR 1910, you're going to get a ton of information that's going to help you with understanding and appreciating safe practice. Safety starts with who? Can everybody just, that I can see you, can you just take your thumbs and just point to yourself? All right. And many of you are bosses, many of you are leads, many of you are supervisors, managers, directors, and we're good at keeping everyone else safe. Do as I say, not as I do. But all of you are safety champions, and safety is your responsibility. It starts with you. If people see you working unsafely, if they see you handling your tools unsafely, if they don't see you using safe practices, they may believe that they can imitate you and do the same thing. For those of you that have been journeymen, apprentices, that have paid your dues, you remember how important safety was to the person that was mentoring you. And so we owe it to them to carry on safety in our mentoring of other people who come on. Sometimes people come from other healthcare organizations to your healthcare organization, and they bring that old mentality of what they got away with when they worked at the other place and those shortcuts that they take. Take that time out. Put those hands up, say, hey, I'm not okay with that. That's not good. I love when I see an engineer or I see a director, and then I love when I see nurses saying, that don't look right. That doesn't look safe. That's not good. Or they send me anonymous tips. I'm a hospital safety officer. People would just leave me a note under my door and they say, hey, you may want to go by the da-da-da unit and take a look at the construction zone over there. They're doing some shady looking stuff. And then I'll show up on the scene and I'll say, hey, contractor so-and-so, we just noticed that your ladder is 200 feet high and you're standing on the top rung, and we just want to have a little conversation with you. We'll let them come down and we have a safety talk with them. But it saves them from potential injury and keeps others from getting hurt. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just need to spend a second on that. Review of safety and support continuing, lockout, tag out. Just by show of hands, how many of you have heard of lockout, tag out, LOTO, and implement it regularly as a part of your safety program at the hospital? Just a horror story for you really briefly. I'm so glad I saw so many hands too, because a lot of people miss that step and they don't take the time to order those tags, have those tags, apply those tags, and put them in place. There is a story you can Google about an elevator maintenance person who turned off an elevator. I'm sure some of you know this story already. It could have even been Home Depot, but I know this is recorded, so I'll amend that by saying it was a big commercial business. All right. And so they had a freight elevator. It was turned off. Someone went underneath, and then the elevator was energized, turned back on, and the person who was inside the shaft got crushed, just smashed. It was so bad they had to bring in the crime scene cleanup people, and it was just a mess. And so when you think about the value and the importance of just placing that lockout tag out on that switch or on that device, it's just a visual reminder, and it's also a lock that keeps you from turning it back on. So let's just look at some of the 7 steps for lockout, tag out. Prepare for the shutdown. This is your safety meeting. This is your meeting with your contractors, with your engineers, with your supervisors, superintendents, foremen. Get them together and prepare ahead of time for the shutdown. Shut down the machines or equipment. Once we shut down the machines or equipment, it shouldn't be just Santiago by himself. This is the one-man show. I shut it down. I didn't tell a single person about it. I didn't send an email to Anthony. I didn't tell Dan about it. I didn't notify William. No, blast that information, pick up the phone and call, communicate with stakeholders and people who work in that area, and I make sure nurses know about our shutdowns from time to time. We can't take it for granted where people may be and what switch they may hit. When I was on the ship in the Navy, there were people that just walked around the ship just hitting switches from time, or turning knobs just because they were bored. All right, we have to be careful and mindful of the things that we know can be turned on and can cause serious injury or death. We want to disconnect the energy isolating devices. Again, in your main electrical break room, your ATSs, your server rooms, wherever it is that you have high voltage or you have equipment that is a major utility, if you're going to have a repair done, you want to put that tag, apply the lockout or the tag out device. Sometimes it's an old-fashioned lock, sometimes it's a twist tie lock, sometimes it's one that requires to be cut. They may be elaborate, they may not be very elaborate, but you want that tag to be really big and you want it to be conspicuous so that they can see your name, your department, the date that you put that tag on there. And then when we can render all stored and residual energy safe, we follow the specific procedures, but we don't turn it back on until we know that it's safe to do so, which takes us to step 6. Verify the isolation and de-energization of the machine or equipment prior to starting the work. So before, verify, during, verify, after, verify. And I'm putting emphasis on that word verify because it's so easy to miscommunicate or not communicate, miss a step, and cause someone to get seriously injured or hurt. We want to reactivate following specific procedures. Now, your individual hospital or facility may have specific steps that you take. Always refer to your LOTO policy and procedure. I guarantee you, at your big organizations, you have a lockout, tag out procedure, even if it's not spelled out in a policy, and it may be attached to some other general policy. But check with your environmental care coordinator, check with your quality department. I'm sure that they can help you out with finding that procedure so that you're following those steps specifically. Now, how to handle and use sharps containers. Sharps containers are all throughout the hospital. And what are some things, please unmute yourself. What are some things that we placed in the sharps container? So I'm not just here running my mouth the whole time. Anyone?
Needles.
Needles. What else can go in the sharps container?
Broken glass.
Broken glass. All right. So your vials, your medication vials, all of those different things can go into the sharps container. Lancets. All right. Any type of small surgical tools can go into a sharps container. There are small wall-mounted sharps containers. There are sharps containers on the carts. And then you have the floor sharps containers that could be 14 gallons. There's even 33-gallon sharps containers. I'm so glad I see people smiling because that means you're having a really good morning and you're enjoying my conversation here. Yes, yes, yes. Please remember that if we don't store or dispose of sharps properly, people could get stuck. And sometimes it seems like it's not a big deal getting stuck by a needle. Well, I know personally that there are people that have been treated. They got to get evaluated. They got to get retested for months. They got to take a cocktail because they got stuck by a needle of someone who was potentially infected. What are some of the diseases that we know of that you can get from getting stuck by a needle? Anyone?
Hep C.
Hep C. What else?
HIV.
HIV, AIDS. And so we want to be, again, very careful. It's not that we can't treat you. It's not that we can't help you, but we want to avoid getting stuck, and if we can, because again, it could be disruptive, and it can also have some potentially hazardous consequences to your long-term health. And so containers must be mounted typically 42 to 52 inches from the floor. I'm sure as engineers, you get calls from time to time, unless the vendors take care of it. Sometimes the big companies like Clean Harbor, Clean Earth, or Stericycle, they may take care of the mounting of the sharps containers. Other times they may expect you all as the engineers to mount those sharps containers. If you mount a sharps container 6 feet high and you got a nurse who's 5 foot tall, they have to reach up over the sharps container to place the sharp into the sharps container. That could present a risk for them. So again, we want to ensure that sharps containers aren't blocked and that they're not placed in locations where they're too high to reach or that people can't get to them. I see on the units a lot of time where things are blocking the sharps container. And so if the nurse has to reach around a linen cart or a food cart to get to the sharps container, they could get stuck. Disposal requirements. Sharps must always be placed in a tight, rigid container with a closing lid. The only thing that's permitted is a vertical drop sharps container if it doesn't have a cap or a closer on it. Horizontal sharps containers typically have a flapper on it. It's easy for needles to get stuck in the horizontal. And so California insists, or they pretty much encourages hospitals to use the vertical drop sharps container so that there's nothing stuck inside of that horizontal flap that can cause someone to get stuck. We must dispose of all of our sharps and biohazardous waste appropriately, safely, and store it in a place where people can't get access to it. That means that if you have a soiled utility room, the sharps containers should be stored in there and the door needs to be locked. When you're doing your rounds, please make sure that those doors are locked and people in the general public and our patients can't get a hold of our sharps container. Believe it or not, there are people that take the sludge from a pharmacy container and try to ingest that and drink all of that residual controlled narcotic, and they'll get that stuff, the fentanyl and all of the different things that are poured into a cactus or a pharmacy sharps container and try to drink that stuff. There's also people that do intravenous drug use, and they'll take those needles and they'll get them out, they'll fish and get those needles and try to reuse those needles. So we want to ensure they're locked up and stored appropriately. And last on our disposal procedures, we have manifesting requirements. We have to separate them. We use the EPA Environmental Protection Agency Nowhere to Throw campaign. So you have your red bin. What's the red bin typically for when we talk about medical waste? Biohazardous waste. Yes, your blood,
Bio.
serum, all of those different things. Biohazardous waste is considered any blood or blood product that you can, that's soaking or caking. All right, so if you have a blood-tinged Band-Aid, that could go in the regular trash. But if you got a bunch of gauze that's soaked in blood, that needs to go in the biohazard container. Yellow is for chemotherapeutic agents and chemotherapy drugs. Blue is for pharmaceutical waste. And blue can have sharps containers too. So that's any residual medication, anything you can see or swirl is considered residual medication, and those need to go into the blue pharma container. Then there is a black container called a RCRA container, Reservation Conservation Recovery Act. Those are your hazardous pharmaceuticals. That's going to be your Coumadin, your nicotine patches, inhalers. Again, you see all these different containers. You got people in environmental services that manages it, but you come into play typically at the accumulation site. We need to have them in the outside area when you're making your rounds, ensure that the hazmat area is closed, it's locked, and it's free from the ability for animals to get inside of it, like the raccoons and possums. They shouldn't be able to get a hold of your biohazardous waste and tear open those bags. And those are things that Department of Public Health is taking a look for. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Ladder safety. This is probably one of the biggest areas where I see so many mistakes being made by our engineers. Even at my hospital right now, currently, I just see any and every type of ladder being used, and there's typically wrong applications in use. So knowing the type, whether it's type 1AA, type 1A, type 1, type 2, type 3, whether it's a step ladder with an A-frame, a step ladder with a platform, a combination ladder, a telescopic ladder, a pole ladder, or an extension ladder. All of these ladders can get you in trouble. What do you think the number one safety concern we have with people using ladders? Anyone?
Getting up too high.
Absolutely, Mr. Crawford. They get up to that second or third step from the top. They don't have it a foot or two over the surface or over the platform where they're going to elevate to. They just have it kind of sitting there. They don't have the rubber stops. The angle is all wrong. They got the thing 85, 90% straight up in the air climbing up this thing. They don't have harnesses. They're just going for it because, hey, I've been climbing my whole life. I know what I'm doing. I have on good shoes. No one gets up in the morning thinking they're going to fall off a ladder. And I've been in the business long enough where I've seen people come off those ladders and some of them never made it back to work. If you sustain a hip injury, a leg injury, a back injury, it can take you out for good. Even using aluminum ladders, and can be hazardous. Can you believe in 2022 in healthcare, we still find aluminum ladders that have been in the engineering shop for 30, 40 years, all right? People should be using the appropriately rated non-aluminum, fiberglass, whatever the material is. We got the different uses and we have the different load. We have the different duty ratings. Pay attention to special duty, extra heavy duty, medium duty, light duty. Each one of those have an appropriate rating. And if you go to Cal OSHA and just go to OSHA site, whether it's California OSHA or federal OSHA, and you just in the keyword type ladder, that's all you got to put is ladder. You're going to get whole fact sheets that are telling you how to be safe with those ladders. And I would encourage the engineering supervisors, managers, directors to just spend them 10 minutes just going over ladder safety, because I can't imagine an engineer in any capacity that didn't need to climb up on the ladder at some point in their career. I'm just a hospital safety officer and I go up on ladders to help with things, all right? And we must be safe. Pay attention to your footwear, your traction, the condition of the ladder, the angle of the ladder, how high you have it extended. Are you leaning it up against somebody? How many of you ever just have someone watch your ladder when you're climbing up that ladder? You have a spotter that's down there making sure somebody, thank you, team. Make sure nobody come by with their goofy cart and push up against your ladder, or somebody walk up under your ladder. They can take you out, and next thing you know, you're injured, you're hurt. And so Cal OSHA defines not only the different ladder types, but the OSHA requirements. Pay attention to the labeling and instructions. A lot of time on the side of the ladder, you can find a lot of good instructions on how to safely use that ladder. One thing that I've seen happen was people will take their power tools up on the ladder and they'll set it on the top of the ladder. And then when they are climbing the ladder or going down, they don't bring the tool with them. So about halfway down the ladder, what happens? Yeah, timber, that power tool comes down on their head, on their leg, on their body, or it can hit someone else. I've also seen people, it's just like a comedy show, when you see people set the paint up on the top of the little platform on the ladder, and they'll set it there while they're painting, and then they're climbing down the ladder, and then the paint just goes splashing all over the place. May not be the biggest safety concern, but boy, it makes a big old mess, and it makes you look like a goofball when all you're trying to do is just paint an area. So pay attention to what you're doing. Be careful if you can use pouches and other different things to hold your tools while you're ambulating up and down the stairs. It's going to make the world of a difference. Also pay attention to your balance, okay? When you're climbing up, people have a tendency to pull back as they're climbing up. And this can cause the ladder to rock and it can cause it to shift. Another thing I've seen is people, when they place the ladder in the planters, they're doing some work, they're putting up Christmas lights outside of the building, and they'll put the ladder inside of the soil or in the bedding of the plant area. And then I'll see the foot of the ladder just digging into the soil and the ladder starting to angle and shift. Seems like a common sense thing, but you'd be surprised what you see people doing when they're just trying to get the job done. So be mindful of that. When lifting, we want to always bend at the knee. Take it from old Safety Officer Santiago. When I was in the Navy, I lifted everything with my back. I used to put everything up on my shoulder. I always carried everything, and I was always showing everybody I was the big, strong guy, and I could carry 2 of those. I could carry 3 of those. And I'll never forget, I believe it was old bosun mate said, work smarter, not harder. And he came with a cart, and he just put everything on the cart. And he said, slow is fast, right? Just take your time. You know, I know that we have a lot of work orders in our system and we got to get the job done. But when you make time for safety, you'll have better outcomes. It'll preserve your lower back. It'll keep you from spending your 50s and 60s in tremendous pain and getting corrective surgery for your back and for your knees because you made time for safety. So again, bend at the knee. If you can use lift equipment, use that lift equipment. One of the things I remember from the pandemic the most was the use of lift equipment with the deceased. We had a refrigerated container, a 40-foot by 8 refrigerated container with as many as 50 bodies in it at one time. And when we were lifting those bodies, we were doing it just by hand at first. I would go out and help security, and it was all lower back. And I remember doing the timeout, we got to get a lift. I told my director, I know we can't spend a whole lot of money, but we need help. You know, we're going to hurt ourselves. We're going to have one of these deceased fall. We got to respect them and preserve ourselves and preserve them, keep them intact. And so we got a lift, a mechanical scissor lift that we were able to put in the center aisle of the container and be able to lift properly. I'll never forget being out at a hospital where a bunch of engineers said, we're going to lift this engine up and we're going to move this motor over down the roof. And we all grabbed the side. And when they said 1, 2, 3, we all lifted. And 2 of them gave out and moved their hand. And what do you think that left me doing? Compensating for them and taking up the weight. And so again, it didn't seem like much at the time, and I was able to endure it. But boy, we get hernias, we get injuries, crushed disc, all of that just as a result of not using proper lifting techniques. So again, don't lift with your back, lift with your knees. If you can use lift equipment, it's going to save the day and help you in the long run. All right, infection control and bloodborne pathogen safety. We have a lot of different infection types, and we talked about airborne viruses. We talked about HIV, AIDS, Hep C, Hep A, coronavirus, monkey virus, you name it. There's so many different types of viruses and diseases that we can transmit. Some are by touch, some are by airborne, some are by contact. We want to do our best that when we're going into these nursing units that we're protecting ourselves. True or false? I could trust that the nurse is going to always tell me I'm in a COVID unit or in a COVID zone. For obvious reasons, false. They're not going to give you heads up. They're not going to tell you somebody's on contact precautions. They're not going to tell you they're on isolation precautions. They're not going to tell you this is somebody with tuberculosis every single time. It's nice when they give you a heads up or they stop you when you show up on the unit. Sometimes you get a work order that just says, hey, I need you to fix this call light. You go knock on the door. Safety Officer Santiago, I'm here to fix this call light. Nurses see you, they look at you, they say good morning, they don't tell you that this person is infectious or got a highly contagious disease. All right, there's cards often on the outside of the door or on the room. It may say gown required, gloves required, face protection required. Some hospitals have gone to saying on all nursing units, on all clinical care units, you must wear full PPE. Have anybody heard of any guidance like that? During COVID times, why even risk it? Get your face shield, get your goggles, get your gloves, get your mask, get your N95s, get fit tested. Ensure you have a good fit test. When you get finished being on that unit, get rid of that PPE. When you're donning your PPE, that means you're putting it on. When you doff your PPE, that means you're taking it off. Remember, safety is your responsibility. And so you're responsible for taking care of what goes into your nostrils, what goes into your mouth and lungs. And you can keep yourself free of infection by wearing the appropriate PPE and then doffing it, taking it off, and disposing of it appropriately. Now, one of the things I've noticed at my hospital, and you may have noticed it as yours, a lot of caregivers are going out with COVID right now. All right, I'm starting to see a surge. It's on the rise. I'm 20 years old, I'm invincible. I'm 30 years old, I'm invincible. I'm not gonna get it. It's not gonna happen to me. If I do get it, I'm young enough to fight it. Whether I got the vaccine or whether I don't have the vaccine, I'm gonna be just fine because I'm young, I'm strong, I work out. As I handled the body bags, as I handled putting those bodies on the rack, I just want to make sure we're taking this part seriously. It didn't discriminate on age. I handled the bodies of 20-year-olds. I handled the bodies of 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50s. It didn't matter if you lifted weights. You don't know what COVID's going to do to your body. You don't know how it's going to attack you. If you're like me and you have underlying conditions, your life and your health depends on you doing the right thing. I can confidently tell you all that with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, I worked throughout the entire pandemic and haven't had a vacation in over 2.5 years. I went into every COVID room where they were doing aerosolized generated procedures, where we put up anti-rooms. I remember engineers that was afraid to go into COVID rooms and the COVID units. I went into every one of those units and I have not contracted COVID. Why? Is it because I'm smart? No, it's because I use my PPE. And I thank goodness that I'm alive, even if it's just to today. I'm fine right now because I use my PPE. So I took time to share my health story and my PPE use just so that I might encourage just one person in the room of the importance of wearing that personal protective equipment so that you can continue to not only take care of yourself, but so that you don't get your family sick, get grandma sick, get your daddy sick, all right? Get your kids sick. What a shame to know you could have worked safely, but you took that stuff home because you weren't being safe, all right? I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm gonna move on. Remember again that there's national and state OSHA regulations, as I mentioned before. Go to the website. I can't stress that enough. Know that OSHA pays attention to what is PPE, doing hazard assessments, having a PPE selection that's appropriate to you, and doing employee training. I would say to every last one of you, especially that big group that's around that conference room table, get a sign-in sheet. Even if this is a study, even if it's just a study group, get a sign-in sheet and put on the top of that OSHA training. Put on top of that PPE training, and that's going to help you when you're going through your surveys. If you ever have an incident with an accidental release or exposure or injury, you can pull a ladder safety incident, you can pull this sign-in sheet out and show them that you spent an entire hour listening to Safety Officer Santiago with his bobblehead, running his mouth, right? And no, that's not OJ. That's supposed to be me. All right. So keep those sign-in sheets and train often. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're wrapping up, gentlemen. Let's do some practice questions. All right, in your chat field, find somebody from your group that can type into the chat, or either you could just call it out. All right, this is actual practice questions from our curriculum. All right, so questions 93 through 100. Let's look at question number 93. Safety should be practiced A, while you sleep, B, every day, C, once per week, or D, during the safety week.
Every day.
Every day. All right. Now, do you think that's a hard question or an easy question?
That's an easy question.
So knock those out. We talked about taking the test. Knock that straight out. When you see something like that, you're not going to be spending 5-10 minutes on that question. While you sleep is ridiculous. Boom. I'm not thinking about that. Once a week, that doesn't make sense. Be every day. 94. Not stepping on the top step of a ladder is practicing what type of safety? Is it personal safety, equipment safety, facility safety, or machinery safety? This one might be a little tougher. What do you
A.
think? All right, we got A. Anyone else other than A?
What question is it again?
This is number 94. Not
94.
stepping on the top step of a ladder.
That would
Keyword.
be personal safety.
All right. Anyone else? General consensus so far seems to be, let me check the comments.
Yeah, no, chat, so we can, because when the chat comes up, we can't see the shit.
I don't see the chat area. Let's see here. All right, so it's actually B, equipment safety. So in this case, you're thinking about yourself. That's one of those ones where you got two good answers, but the answer turned out to be equipment safety. So when you're reading this, not stepping on the top step of a ladder, putting the emphasis on the equipment. Ladder is an equipment, so we want to make sure you know going into the test that sometimes you got to pay attention to certain key words so that you don't get tripped up. They're not trying to trick you, but there is a difference between personal safety and equipment safety. All right, so the answer is D. All right, hazardous, number 95. Hazardous waste spills are cleaned using what? Is it chemical pumps, absorbent socks, sawdust-like material spread over the spill, and special wet, dry vacuums and chemical filters? That's a tough one. I'm gonna tell you, I missed that one. Just because it seemed like there were 2 or 3 good answers.
I'm gonna go with D on that one.
All right, hazardous spill. Anyone else? Believe it or not, it's B, absorbent socks. Do any of you use those? It's called pig, or they have those absorbent berms. Do anybody ever see those?
Yeah, I've
That's
seen
the
those
answer.
before.
That is the answer from MECH. Now, I've used wet dry vacs. I've also used sawdust-like material called vermiculite, different absorbent material that you can sprinkle over. They got one called ZEP that you could just kind of sprinkle on the spill. All right, so that's an example of an answer that seems a little tough, but again, absorbent sock is the answer for this. Number 96, and please don't beat me up. I didn't write these questions, but just giving you a preview of what the questions are going to look like. Don't get worried just yet. Again, you're going to rule out the ridiculous. You're going to key in. If I had to rule out on number 95, which ones would I get rid of on 95?
A and D.
A and D. I'd get rid of A and D at least. And if I had to guess between B and C, if I needed to spend 3 minutes or 5 minutes on one or come back to one, that would be one I'd come back to. All right. But typically when you get a spill kit, you're going to see always, if you got a really good spill kit or one that's pre-made, it's going to have those absorbent socks in it. Let's go to 96. Picking up heavy load involves either A, bending at the waist and picking it up with one movement, B, bending at the legs, C, getting a pry bar to pick up at one end, or D, getting the rigging crew to move the load. What you think, gentlemen? How about you, Dan?
B.
I would go with B.
B, you guys got it. And I shared that with you earlier. Always bend at those legs, bend at the knee. That's going to make a world of difference. D is what I was doing up on the roof with that engine that time. We got the rigging crew. We got all the engineers together. You're young, you're strong. Let's pick this engine up and this motor up and let's carry it across the roof. No good, no good. 97, fuel, oxygen, and an ignition source are needed to do what? Produce an electrical problem, create a fire, get rid of hazardous materials, or start a car.
Create a fire.
Absolutely. We call that the fire triangle. Remember stop, drop, and roll? When you do stop, drop, and roll, you're removing or displacing oxygen by smothering it out. That's why we go to the ground. A lot of people do the SpongeBob and they run around, bah, 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 and you just become a bigger fireball, all right? We want to stop, we drop, we roll. But in the case of the ingredients to make a fire, fuel, oxygen, and the ignition are an accelerant instead of fuel. Any type of flammable or accelerant is going to be one of the three pieces to make a fire. Number 98, eliminating the chance that forces could be unleashed on you. And this is a tough question. Eliminating the chance that forces could be unleashed on you or others is called A, common sense, B, lockout, tagout, C, reasonable precautions, or D, depressurization.
Lockout, tag out.
Lockout, tagout, you got it. So all of our major utilities, all of our major systems, they have forces, electrical forces, mechanical forces, engineering forces, weight forces. If we don't put a lockout, tag out, when we take these things out of service, de-energize them, it can unleash havoc and chaos on people, creating serious injury or death. Number 99, a safety standard is described as which of the following: a state law, an approved practice, a code requirement, or a healthcare preference.
Code requirement.
What else do we have? Anyone else?
Healthcare preference.
Okay, preference. All right, anything else? This is a safety standard now, a safety standard, meaning we got to do this.
State law.
That would be tempting, all right? And so an approved practice is what we call a best practice, all right? State laws are different from place to place, and they may not adhere in California the way they do in another state. But an approved practice in general, hey, every time you use the arc welding, you should ground yourself. That's just an approved practice. So we want to ensure that we're using approved practice that's based on the gold standard, if you will. So anytime you see a stamp or a seal of approval or something that comes out in the form of a policy, that's saying it's an approved practice. And again, we may have policies and procedures inside of our hospital that are specific to our policies and best practice that are approved practices. Now, 100, question number 100. The type of ladder that should not be used for electrical, huh?
Aluminum.
Y'all got that? Y'all ready to go? See, number 93 and number 100 are the ones you knock out right away. You just knock those out. And so when you think about 1, 2, let me get my calculator here. I wasn't the best at math here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You had 8 and we missed 2. Carry 1. 75% if we missed 2 of these. We had 8 questions, you missed 2, all right? Let me have Beth come on the line. Beth, are you there?
I am here.
So out of, I don't know, 100 questions, what percentage do they need to pass again?
You know, that is something I'm gonna have to look into. I don't have that number off the top of my head.
No worries, I'm gonna bet, and I'm a betting man. I go to Vegas often. I'm gonna bet you gotta have at least 70%. So we're shooting for 80 to 90% pass rate. That means if you miss 10 questions out of 100, if you miss 20 out of 100, if it's 70%, you still have an outstanding chance of passing that test. So you want to hone in on those super easy ones. I guarantee you there's going to be, out of 100, there's going to be 60 super easy questions. Super easy questions. The other ones you're going to have to read. Beth will email you or we'll send out, again, and even when it's time to take the test, they're going to, I guarantee you, team, they're going to tell you how many you're going to be able to miss, what the pass rate's going to be, and then what protocols or what procedures are required to take the test, all right? So here's the answer key. You might have noticed, B, 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 B. Don't get caught up in looking for patterns. It does not always work like that, all right? So don't get into putting B, 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 and then, okay, that's a pattern. I'm gonna just go with that pattern. Go with the best answer with the correct answer. With a minute left, I'll open the floor to anyone if there's any questions, any comments.
Where is the test being held?
Beth?
The next tests that we're going to be holding are going to be in conjunction with our regional seminars. The Southern California seminar on September 15th in Long Beach, and then the Northern California seminar on October 20th in Fairfield.
Okay,
And we'll be sending out materials for both of those events, hopefully towards the end of June.
okay, awesome. Thank you.
I'll spend a second just to remind you that we have a lot of subject matter experts on here. I know we got Phil, we got Anthony, we got Dave Lockhart and Dave Baker. We got a ton of experts. I don't expect safety and support services to be the toughest part of the test. Be sure you spend time on that electrical, that plumbing, that HVAC, get that down pat, review it, pay attention to it. Safety is always connected to everything, all right? So when you take a look at PPE, best practice safety, the general guidelines, code compliance is going to go a long way in helping you pass this test. On behalf of the California Society for Healthcare Engineering, all of our state executives and our local presidents, we'd like to say good luck on taking that test. You're going to do great. Don't hesitate to reach out to me at santiago.chambers@tenethealth.com if you have any further questions. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Be well. Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Go
An
next.
honor. My pleasure.
Thank you, Santiago. I will see you next week.
I'll see you. Take care now.